Hey, welcome to Autistic History and the Autism Wars. This is part 15 of a series. So we left off in 92 after the formation of the Autism Network International, the earliest known autism network, and it formed to connect autistics to other autistics online, which was a new frontier opening up for a lot of people, but not quite available to everyone just yet. So there was also a pen pal list. So if autistics wanted to write to other autistics, they could connect through that. So this next section we're going to come up to is going to talk about failed promises and pushback. Now, there was a promise from Autism Society of America to Jim Sinclair and other autistics at that group to give them more inclusion and be heard in an autistic lived experience way, but that never actually came to happen. So this is where we're at right now. So after ANI launched, several announcements were sent to ASA and other parent-run autism organizations for inclusion in their community newsletters. None of them published information, and the only response heard was via a whisper campaign launched at Sinclair by an ASA board member. The person told others that Sinclair was not really autistic. Ooh, all the way back in 92. Yes, this pattern goes really far back on discrediting autistics, but I digress. Let me get back here. It didn't seem to matter that two psychologists who reviewed Sinclair's record and confirmed an autism diagnosis were members of ASA's professional advisory board. One of the doctors, one of the doctors even testified under oath at a rehabilitation hearing that Sinclair was in fact autistic. The facts here didn't fit the organization's agenda and therefore didn't apply. Now, do we remember who the founders of Autism Society of America are in what 1965 era? This is Bernard Rimland and Ivar Lovaas. So that is the culture and belief systems that are being embraced here, and autistics are not fitting into their agenda. All right. Sinclair wrote of this experience: in a clear attempt to undermine our group cohesion, Kathy and some other autistic adults were directly warned that I was not what I claimed to be. So this is Sinclair saying, in a clear attempt to undermine our group cohesion, Kathy and some other autistic adults were directly warned that I was not what I claimed to be. Meanwhile, Donna was encountering similar denunciations as her book began to receive international attention. So the pushback from the NT parents was already happening back in 91, 92. So the pushback from NT parents, however, didn't stop ANI from moving forward. That November, ANI published their first Our Voice community newsletter. We had about 15 subscribers, most of whom were non-autistic parents of autistic children. It was hard to find other autistic people. In terms of numbers, the initial response was discouraging. Hostile responses from established NT-run autism organizations were also unexpected and upsetting, wrote Sinclair. Even worse, It seemed that when we did manage to find each other and work together to further our goals, responses from the autism establishment escalated and escalated from indifference to active subterfuge. Did I say that right? Subterfuge? subterfuge. Yeah, that word. So the negative response from NT parents and professionals was startling. This was not expected. These patterns hadn't hit before, so this is the first experience for Jim Sinclair and these other autistics to get this just astounding pushback. It was not expected. So yeah, many of the autistics involved with ANI had spoke to NT parents extensively in the past and never before encountered such hostility. So almost invariably, the parents were pleased and excited to hear from us. True, their primary interest was in using us as resources for their children rather than supporting us in our own goals, but still, they were not hostile towards us. It seems that one autistic person at a time, and preferably a passive one, might be welcomed in an interesting novelty or an amusing diversion, or possibly even a valuable source of information and insight. But autistic people organizing together, autistic people pursuing our own interests rather than furthering the interests of parents and professionals, suddenly we were perceived as a threat. A threat. Autistic voices networking together were a threat to these parent-founded and parent-run organizations all the way back in the 90s, early 90s, late 80s. So this pushback that we are so used to now in advocacy and activism work started long before most of us arrived on the planet, and it started long before many of us even knew we were autistic and started becoming self-advocates and the like, right? So this is a pattern that goes back decades on decades, and it explodes even a bit bigger at the 1993 International Conference on Autism. And this is the conference where the autism as a tragedy narrative was challenged by Sinclair. And so I'm going to share that in the next video here. It gets pretty interesting, these Autism Wars. And the very first one that I am aware of happened online in a parent-run group with autistics, and they end up calling them the Flame Wars. The Flame Wars get started, and then that evolves into like the Snore Wars, and this is Autistic History, and you may have never heard of it yet if you've only ever heard the general autistic history known by those who aren't autistic, I guess. All right, so we're going to hear more autistic voices in the next video and more about how the Flame Wars get going. Thank you for learning more about autistic history with me, and I look forward